refrigeration for pack houses has heavy loads. And I think Eugene, the speaker before me, spoke about what it takes to measure, to do the studies of how much solar panels you would need, the size of batteries and things of that nature. I'm not a technical expert on the battery sizes and the solar panels needed, but I am an expert on the refrigeration and the cost of energy. Most pack houses is a large capacity user on energy use, and this freezing and chilled product requires a lot of energy and a lot of horsepower to bring it to a place, especially if you're doing pre-cooling or blast freezing. It's very difficult to get, and I'm just being honest, it's very difficult to get solar panels cost effective in Egypt. In other parts of the world where kilowatt per hour costs are 51 cents, 35 cents, 24 cents, it makes sense. But right now in Egypt, the cost per power is on the industrial side is about US 7 to 8 cents per kilowatt hour. So I'll speak about that a little bit. Solar panel is less expensive than it used to be, just like any other technology. The more it gets developed, the more it gets sold, the cheaper it gets. So, next page. I want to speak about the pros and cons, as I spoke earlier, about pros and cons for agribusinesses for solar energy in pack house operation. Like I said, to have control of your electrical production is key to a lot of the places, depending on where you're at in the world. It's more environmentally friendly than diesel or electric grids. You have a clean production, you have no outcome except for the battery. Environmental issue later on, 5 to 10 years later, you have to look at what you're going to do with the battery. You have relatively low maintenance, but one thing in operational needs, you need to be able to maintain the sanitation of the panels so you to have the maximum amount of energy use out of that panel. Dirt, feces, whatever that's on that panel will lower the use of or the energy generation of that panel. So you have to create an SOP or a procedure that allows you to keep the panel clean. Your engineer, your refrigeration guy has to make sure the panels are working and the wires are working. I want to speak about I have a couple friends in Yemen. Yemen during the war lost 95% of power production. The electric grid was actually a target of the people who was bombing them. So right now, 85% of Yemen has power because of solar. So I wanted to bring that to the forefront because solar is just not sustainable. Like I said, it could be saving your life. They use it to purify water. They use it to cook their food. And solar used to be very expensive in Yemen, and now it's very cheap. So this is a perspective that I thought was really interesting. I have two friends that's from Yemen. So there's reasons to do renewable energies, not only because of the environmental impact, but it's also a life-saving event as well, could be, depending on circumstances. So in some countries, the cost of solar panel adds to your operational CapEx, capital expenditures. There's different payment schemes, financial schemes that are incentivizing solar uptake around the world. I'm not that sure what Egypt is offering as far as from a government perspective, but in some places you have pay-as-you-go, you have financing schemes that they put liens against your property, things of that nature that I'm not sure is available in Egypt. Some of the cons. So it's environmentally friendly up front, but these batteries over the next 5 to 7, 8 years will have to be replaced, and disposal of the batteries that you input now has to be done correctly. For example, lead acid batteries in the US you can make $30 or $35 a battery on the core charge, or in Europe as well, where you turn it in and you get a $35 incentive to recycle. But on these lithium-ion batteries, there's no such thing in place. So you end up with a battery in remote areas that has to be recycled when it's no good. The way that gets recycled, you have to freeze it at minus 268 Fahrenheit and then do away with the lithium inside of it. So that's the most difficult part and the environmentally challenge that solar has, battery, and the battery part of it. So I'm just bringing up the pros and cons for you to make a decision. I'm not going one way or another. It's a cleaner energy than what we currently do, but we need to understand we may be just delaying the inevitable if we do not dispose the battery properly. So some of the other cons that we found in other parts of the world and here as well, local repairmen, service availability. You don't have, everybody doesn't know how to operate or repair panels, or there's not really a large provider of panels in a lot of these developing countries. You have to get the parts from China or imported. You have to wait, the delays on shipping, all of these types of things. So that's a real challenge. So the main issue in Egypt, cost is higher than Egyptian's grid cost. But it will change. As everybody knows, the kilowatt per hour charges in Egypt has changed over the last 2 years, doubled, I believe, each year. I think it's went from 4 cents to 7 cents in less than 2 years. So we need to understand that that's probably going to be the typical challenge over the next few years, is that energy costs are rising. So solar, what it does is allow you to stabilize that fluctuation. So even though this is a con on here, over the next 2 years, if Egyptian's kilowatt hour per price does the same thing it has done in the last 2 to 3 years, then solar will actually be cheaper and it will be the same steady price throughout the existence of the capex or the equipment. So that's one thing to really keep in mind. It's, right now, I put this little slide together. It's simple. The solar with battery over 25 years is costing 9 cents per kilowatt hour. This is US dollars. And the Egyptian grid is right at 7. So right now it's cheaper to do the grid. But again, this has changed from 4 to 7 in less than 2 years. So if it changes that again, it's going to be 12 cents a kilowatt hour. So this will be a steady 9 for the life of the 25 years of the solar. So now, as far as from a pack house side, innovation side on agriculture, I know there's a lot of spices and herbs in Egypt that need to be dried and packaged correctly. So there's a solar drying of commodities. What this does is food safety initiatives get handled better. You actually comply with the food safety program that you have better. Right now, I think tomatoes is being done in open air fields, laid out on tarps, which allows insects, bugs. There's a certain quantity that's allowed in there, but the solar drying allows it to take place inside of a building. It's much cleaner, much nicer, and it's safer. So I believe most everybody in here that uses solar is using it for solar irrigation, I believe, right? So that's also a technology that it has an uptake around the world quite a bit. The pump is generated by solar panels. It's quite cheap. Solar water heaters, if you need hot water. Off-grid solar cold storage like D-Grid Energy. This one here is from India. It's EcoFrost. There's a lot of uptake on them as well. But from an operational side, and this is where my expertise come in. Some few years ago, Rockefeller Foundation did a project in Kenya, and they instituted 3 warehouses and through corporations and different people. This system turned into a ripening room rather than a cold storage. And the reason why is the operators did not understand air circulation, how to stack, how to leave space. There were some design flaws as well, but minor. The main issue was that the people who actually owned the cold storage or got the cold storage did not know how to use it. They stacked too much product in it. The oranges and the mangoes that they put in there actually ripened over 3 days and spoiled. They lost 50 tons of product in less than a week. It's a lot of money. So to efficiently operate any cold storage, whether that be your refrigerator, whether that be your modular cold storage or a third-party logistic major industrial size warehouse, you have to understand that certain items need to be stored in certain temperatures. You have to get an understanding that you just don't stack raw product with frozen product, or you don't cross-contaminate ice cream with fish, which we probably all know in here. But it also that there has to be circulation space, right? If you store in crates, you want to make sure it's off the wall by, say, half a meter all the way around the room. So if you buy a 40-ton unit, you're actually going to only use 25 tons of that unit. So, yeah, so I want everybody to understand. Okay, there's somebody switched it to me. There's also off-grid solar food processors. In Spear Farms, can we go back to the page before? Spear Farms has a solution that has change phase materials in the insulation of the walls that helps stabilize the temperature of that facility. This facility acts as a fruit and vegetable processor, has a sink, it has software, has temperature monitoring, has GPS system involved in it. The change phase material that I spoke about in the walls allows it to have a smaller solar array that is also allowed it to have a smaller battery as well. This is having uptake in most of Africa. It's well funded through Europe, and they're trying to get into different places. Egypt, however, has a larger production in per Ferdan than, say, where this system would be implemented. This is basically 1 to 2 tons a day. So it's more for the smallholder farmers in East Africa, West Africa.